I'm sorry.
I
There we
have
go.
that post-it note on my computer.
Okay.
Turn,
On.
turn on recording. It's those lessons we learned, those rookie mistakes. It's like, oh yeah, we didn't record any of that.
Yeah.
Not that has ever happened at any of our events. It's like, oh, that
I
oh
did, I did a
crud
whole
moment.
podcast interview way back when I was, just launching my podcast 4 years ago. Did a whole interview without turning the recording on.
I just I just had one of those not long ago. It's like, what?
Uh,
Fortunately, it was the other way around. I was being interviewed. Anyway, enough of
Good
that.
morning, Doug.
Good
Doug.
morning, everybody.
Yes. Olga, good to have you here again. Yeah. So we'll just continue to add people as we progress here. We're just literally getting started here. So welcome to day two. And
Dun,
we
dun,
had a
dun.
bit of a homework assignment last night to discover your IAM. And again, the intent there is not to do a particularly deep dive. We just wanted to have the pump primed just a little bit here as we
Yeah.
get thinking about some of this stuff.
Yeah.
So
How was the homework? Did anybody take a look at the homework for those of you who were here with us yesterday? Gene? Yeah. Good.
yeah,
Good.
yeah. Well, why don't you unmute and give us a little 8 bars of what
Not to
you
put
may
you
have noticed
not to put you on the
in the
spot.
homework.
Yeah, I mean, it was good just to check in with, what's important to me, whether it was core values or my purpose or the I am piece, or the actions. You'll love this. My action was to not take out my anger on the insurance agent who was just trying to help me fix the deductible problem.
Oh, okay.
That person is a person too,
Yep. He or she is greatly going to appreciate that.
Jill is nodding. Sounds like she's had some experience with insurance as well. Yeah.
I back in a past life, I was a biller for an fire department and ambulance company. So many conversations. Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good action. That's a good action.
And then what barriers? So, I thought about that, and then the action to overcome them. I remembered I had another tool, so I contacted someone who can help, and indeed she is helping. So
Oh,
that's
fantastic.
delegation.
Perfect. Perfect. I love it.
Oh,
Good.
that's fantastic. I
Thank
love
you,
it.
Jordan.
Yeah, that
Or
it
George.
stirs that,
Gene. Thank you,
when
Gene.
we're doing these things and it stirs, memories and things that we have going on and reminds us. It's like, oh yeah, I am not in this alone. There are other things I can go do. So yeah, that's good. And I appreciate everybody's attention to it. I got a text. I'll give Mr. Caskey a shameless plug this morning. He sent me a text this morning, said I did my homework, but I've got a client. So I'm not gonna be there this morning, but I did my homework. So so that's good. So we appreciate that. So
Good. Well, today we've got a work
boy,
day set up here for you. And the promise yesterday was that was the day you're going to hear us talk most uh, out of all the 5 days. Today, we're not going to be talking a whole lot. You are actually going to be interacting with each other, and with a very specific model that we've got here that we want to actually play with a little bit and
yeah.
have you kind of experiment with just a little bit here. Again, the idea here is how do we enhance our impact as leaders and do it in a way that, from our language, is elegant. And by elegant, I'm talking about minimal unintended consequences. So, and Gene, appreciate, the comment about the insurance agent, minimal unintended consequences. I don't need blowback from that person. I just need to get the problem solved, that sort of a thing. So a large part of this has to do with, that state of being. How do I approach it? How do I set it up? All of that kind of stuff. So these are some of the things that we're going to be looking at with this piece that we're going to be, presenting to you today. And again,
Yeah.
we're going to be in breakout sessions. We're going to give you a couple of, opportunities to actually interact with each other, kind of in a mastermind kind of a context as you explore some different things here.
Yeah.
So
So shall I commence? I don't want to disappoint anybody. We did come with slides. so nobody's disappointed. So let me share. I'll share my screen and Blaine, if you want to watch the door there for a second,
I've got the door.
I'll get us into some slides here. So very first thing always is I want to just make sure that you can see just the slide deck. You can just see that it's clear and you can hear me and all the rookie presenter things I forget to ask whenever we do these. It's like, yeah, you can actually see what I'm doing. Okay, great. Thanks, Jim. Thank you. And thank you, Jill, for the head nod there. I appreciate that. All right. So today, when we talked about yesterday, we kind of talked about the flow of the week. Today, we're going to focus in on dimensions of leadership. And our intention is to use, as Blaine was mentioned, about a little less than the kind of the first half to go through this model. We'll do a little review, but then we really want to get into some working sessions. And again, we have a worksheet and some homework and a promise for a document I promised yesterday that we'd create. So Dr. Bartlett, you want to start with this, and then I'll.
Yeah. Not going to go in a deep dive on this. We did a little bit of that yesterday, but the idea of how do you define leadership? In this, I mean, that question came up very frequently for me when I was doing a whole lot of developmental work, with Nokia as an example, with Apple, some work I did with Microsoft, with AstraZeneca when we were developing a whole mentoring program for them. How do you define this thing called leadership? Well, I won't go into that, but the net of it here has to do with the kind of leadership that we're looking at has little to do with command and control. It has little to do with traditional ways of thinking about leadership where I'm the boss, you do what I say, that sort of stuff. We wanted to move away from a military model, which is where most leadership conversations begin and end, that hierarchical structure, that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
this definition, influencing, it is about state of being. How do I show up? Yeah. We are energetic bodies having interactions with energetic systems. And energy is always in play. Energy is always moving in some way, shape, or form. So this influencing question really is about how am I utilizing energy? And I don't mean this in a woo-woo sort of a sense. I mean this very pragmatically.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. And all of us have had this experience of somebody walking in the room and we just kind of, the hair on the back of our necks just kind of stand up and go, ooh, don't want to have that interaction right now. And they haven't said a word, but you've got a sense that, yeah, there'd be danger here, sort of a thing. That's the energy that we're looking at. So people are either attracted to or repelled by that energetic dynamic. And I want to be able to manage that. That's where the influencing piece comes into play here. So
Mhm.
influencing others before I open my mouth, what happens? Then we've got the co-creation. I've got an idea about what I want to have happen. How do I actually have you own it rather than me dictating it? So when I do this well, when co-creation has actually been accomplished, I have moved everything from compliance into commitment. And there is a qualitative difference between those two dimensions. Compliance, yeah, I'll get just enough to get you out of my face, or I'll do just enough to get you off my back, sort of a thing. Yeah. Commitment, I'm going to do whatever I need to do because this is meaningful to me. This is important to me. And that's the distinction. And this is where creativity, innovation actually live. People get very creative when they start looking at problem solving. Coordinated movement, we're going to be moving into uncharted territory if we're doing this effectively, because part of the idea here is how do we scale and grow. We don't know the safe path, so it's guaranteed we're going to step on each other's toes. So coordinated movement, and this is the piece that we want to really land with this, is it's not about generating harmony. It's
Yep.
about being able to utilize inevitable conflict in a way that serves where it is that we want to go. And that inevitable conflict, if we can manage it and work with it well, is not personal. People don't take umbrage around it. They actually understand what's in play. And they actually embrace it. They actually, look forward to actually, how do we work with this now? I mean, it's kind of like steel sharpening steel sort of a deal. And then the pursuit of a worthy ideal circles back to co-creation. That worthy ideal is where meaning is generated. Okay. Behavior is always a consequence of meaning that has been put in place here. How I describe something determines how I feel about it, which generates my behavior. Managing that description process is where that worthy ideal comes into play. So that's the definition here. Leaders cause movement. The way we cause movement is important. And when we're doing this particular doing this definition, what we have in place here is a way to assess how elegant are we being.
Right.
Minimal unintended consequences. Okay. We don't want to have to, reinvent the wheel, go back and do work over, go back and put a Band-Aid on somebody's hurt feelings and, all that kind of stuff, because that takes time, and time is, money. It takes resources, yeah, all that stuff that could be targeted and utilized elsewhere. So
Right.
elegance becomes kind of the litmus test of how I'm doing as a leader. And this is the definition that we actually run that process through.
Yeah. And just as a just as a reminder, at the end of that sentence, when we talk about in pursuit of a worthy ideal, and just to touch on this very quickly, the worthy ideal is not your vision, it's not your goals, it's not increasing sales 10%. That guy driving the forklift in the warehouse moving pallets from one room to another room, or that is not their worthy ideal. It's not your objectives. It is the answer to what matters. What matters. And the unique, because we're in leaders, right? When an organization is a body of relationships, what matters will change person to person in alignment to that worthy ideal for the organization. So when you're focusing as a leader, the end state is that what is the worthy ideal? The for the sake of what are we moving? Are we moving towards? What is the for the sake of what? And
And in the work we do, and this is the work we do,
it is.
these two models, I mean, everything it begins and ends with these two models. Not going to belabor this. We're going to just kind of, position it again here, just as a
Yes.
reference point. Leaders operate in a universe. Yeah, every organization has, all of these elements in place. I mean, they truly do. They have all of these elements in this leadership universe in place. The primary focus typically is going to be around the why, what, and how, the vision, the strategy, and the tactics.
Yeah.
The kind of leadership that we're looking at developing here takes place at the mindset spirit piece, and it uses imagination as kind of the lever. Yeah, that's kind of the catalyst piece.
Mhm.
Yeah, but without the play of the imagination, to quote Carl Jung here, without the play of the imagination, nothing of consequence has ever been developed. So we want to be able to actually entertain the use of the imagination in a very generative way. And leaders create possibility. They create possibility in people's minds. And then the challenge is, how do you move possibility into probability so that probability can become a reality? So there's actually a sequence that happens there, but it starts with the imaginal act. And then moving it from possibility into probability is where that mindset conversation actually takes place.
Mhm.
What are the inhibitors that are out of sight, out of mind? These are the ones that are actually controlling, a lot of behavior in organizations as well as for individuals. So moving into that mindset exploration is really where the body of the work in developing myself as a highly effective leader actually takes place. And then that whole spirit piece has to do with everything seeks expression. It seeks fulsome expression. How do we tap into that energy? And it isn't energetic. So we want to be
Yes.
able to tap into that, because that's where creativity and innovation actually exist.
Yeah.
So this is all latent in an organization. All of these 5 domains are actually, or 6 domains actually, are present in every organization.
Mhm.
They're not utilized particularly well, and that's the challenge, I think, of the kind of leader that we're looking to have folks actually step into here. And then the 4 pillars kind
Yeah.
of support all of this in terms of an actionable piece.
Yeah, and we touched on this yesterday, and today we'll talk a little bit more about it towards the end of the day today. But really, it's built around trust. Everything, the foundation for all of this is trust, and we'll be talking about trust in a model that we're going to explore here in a minute. Autonomy is the willingness to give people permission to try, and that's found. It has to be founded on trust and the four dynamics of trust. I trust me. I trust you. You trust you. You trust me. And that trust is what gives us the ability to create that environment where autonomy becomes natural. Trust is an interesting beast. It takes 5 to 7 interactions psychologically to create trust, one interaction to break it, and 6 to 9 months to recover it. So trust is a really interesting dynamic inside any organization. Then communication and transparency. Communication is that willingness to be vulnerable. It's that willingness to have a conversation. It's that willingness to say, I don't know. What do you think? And transparency is directly tied to that vulnerability. It doesn't mean disclosing everything. A lot of people get queasy around the word transparency. There's this, I can't tell them everything. It's like, got it. But we're really talking about being transparent about moving towards that worthy ideal. Growth and innovation, again, it is in that arc with trust and autonomy. And if you're communicating and you're transparent about communication, growth and innovation become a natural part of that ebb and flow inside of any organization. Growth is what happens. It's that willingness to invest in your team, the willingness to look. I had a book come to me this week from a podcast guest called The Retention Trap, talking about growth and how to grow your team. And then innovation is people willing to say, what if, and ask that question. And that's where imagination lives inside. Blaine touched on this. Imagination lives in innovation. Waddles talks about it in there as the thinking stuff. And then systems of accountability is not Trello, not Excel, although that's important stuff. Thank you, Peter Drucker. But it's important from our willingness to be accountable to and with each other as we move towards that worthy ideal. What communication structure do we put in place, and how does all of that work? And today, at the end of the day, we're going to give you the document we talked about yesterday that we've been meaning to create for a whole year that talks about all of these things that you can take away as a crib notes. So, all right.
At the end of the day, leaders cause movement. That's what they do. That's all a leader fundamentally does, is they cause movement, they cause change. And I want you to stop and think about this. The primary focus of leadership is change. That's what we're trying to make happen here. Change in service of producing some sort of a result out there.
Mhm.
Management is the activity of generating results through the use of resources. Managers hate change.
Yes.
Managers like
Oh,
stability
yeah.
and predictability. Leadership causes chaos and unpredictability. So there's a very interesting push me, pull me sort of a relationship going on here. Leaders need to be able to cause movement in a way that allows for management to address the uncertainty that is created through that movement process, that dynamic. Otherwise, you get basically you get paralysis in an organization, and it doesn't
Right.
work the way you'd like it to work. So what we have is a bit of a model here that allows for that process to take place. And actually, it's a way to actually kind of codify and think about, how do I cause this movement? What are the actual elements that I need to pay attention to? What are the levers that I can work with? We'll operate within this leadership universe. But when I'm causing movement, I need to be very aware of some different things. So this ACT model, leaders act, and this ACT acronym stands for awareness, context, communication, commitment, and trust. These are the 5 things that as a leader, I actually pay attention to that are actionable. These are things that I can actually work with. So when I'm looking at, this exploration of mindset as an example, okay, how do I do that? How do I invite my people to do that? All of those sorts of things come into play here. This is the engine model this ACT model is kind of the
Yeah.
engine of the whole process. So we're going to be spending today, in the time that we have left here, diving into this. We're going to put you into some breakout sessions around this, and I'm pointing over here because that's where my screen is. It's kind of over.
You're over there.
Yeah, it's over there. So we'll take this apart one by one here. Awareness. Those of you that are familiar with the concept of emotional intelligence, Daniel Goleman's work on emotional intelligence, the foundation of emotional intelligence is awareness, self-awareness, situational awareness, awareness of others. There's a reason for that. Roughly, according to Goleman's estimations here, fully 90+% of a leader's effectiveness literally comes back to their sense of awareness, their ability to be aware of what's going on in their environment. That environment includes not only the physical external environment, it's also the internal environment. Everything external is a manifestation of what's going on internally. And so I want to be able to track what's going on in my mind, in my conversation, that 3 a.m. conversation I have with myself. Okay. Here's a way to think about this. You're going in this direction, you're doing something, and all of a sudden, squirrel, your attention gets hijacked. Okay. And all of a sudden, you're now paying attention to something else. And what was the trigger? Where did that come from? Yeah, it didn't happen by accident. There was something that made sense. There was some meaning that was affiliated with that squirrel move that attracted your attention and diverted your energy as a consequence of that. We want to begin to notice what we're noticing.
Yeah.
Notice what we're noticing. That's what awareness actually comes into, how awareness comes into play and how it's utilized in an organization. In organizations, people's attentions are distracted all the time. There's squirrels running all over the place in most organizations. And a very simple truism is energy does not follow intention. Energy follows attention. And when people's attention is hijacked, that energy, that creative force is not available to where I want it to be applied. So part of what we do here with an awareness conversation is begin to notice what we're noticing. Notice what has been out of awareness. The power in this has to do with an increase in awareness increases my choice-making capacity. I recognize, I identify choices I had never seen before. Now, here's a little trivial fact, and you don't have to remember this at all, but there's a law when we look at systems, the law of requisite variety is what it's called. And again, you don't have to remember this. I'll just kind of drop the nugget in. What the law basically suggests is that the element in any system that has the most choices available to it will be the dominant element in the system. Now, that makes sense. Okay, the element in the system that has the most choices available to it will ultimately be the dominant element in the system. So when you're looking at your organization, your team, you're going to get pushback continuously about things. If you don't have more choices available than the pushback is presenting to you about how you deal with that, the choices, that pushback is going to win. The pushback is going to stop the process. Okay. You need to have more choices available for how you respond, not react, how you respond to the inevitable pushback that comes into play here. That's the power of having awareness as a fundamental grounding piece for how you approach your job as a leader. Which moves us into the context conversation. Context is a meaning generator. The simplest way I can explain this, I want you to think about the home that you live in, the apartment, the home, whatever it is. And you have a kitchen and you have a bedroom. Okay, I'm going to just take those two rooms. And you are an efficiency maven. You love efficiency. And so you've had this, kind of niggling thought in your mind about how do I actually capture a little bit more time in my morning? And you like your cup of coffee in the morning. So you've been thinking about this and you're going, I'm going to move my bed into the kitchen because I will eliminate about 14 steps in the morning. And over time, that is going to actually aggregate a fair amount of time that I've just now saved. All I have to do is reach over to the coffee pot. It's already there. I've got it on a timer. It's already there. I don't have to get up out of bed and move. Now, so you take it on yourself to move the bed into the kitchen. It physically fits. Your significant other comes home at the end of the day and they see a bed in the kitchen and they go, "What in the hell were you thinking?" And you go, "No, no, no. Let me tell you why." And you explain the business case for this. The business case makes sense, but the room is a kitchen. A bed doesn't belong in the kitchen. You're not in a studio apartment. The bed, the context of kitchen does not allow for content of bed. And this is where we get in trouble in organizations. We will make the business case for the change, but we've never addressed the contextual frame that the change is taking place within. And all of a sudden, people go, "Well, this too shall pass." Leaders, highly effective leaders, pay attention to the context in which the change is occurring and they make adjustments to contextual framing. This is why the question, yeah, if we did this, what would it make possible for you that you don't get to have, do, or be unless we did this? That is a
Yeah.
contextual shifting question. Yeah, you want to be able to handle context. And this, awareness and context come into play here. Awareness of the context. Yeah, the pushback oftentimes has little to do with the efficacy or the validity of the change itself. It has to do with something very interesting here. People don't resist change because of the change. They resist change because of the shift in relationships that change causes. Remember yesterday I said everything in an organization is relational. Who am I? Where do I belong? These are two relationship questions that are always in play in people's minds. Change gets introduced, people sort in their mind subconsciously, who am I in relationship to this change? Where do I fit in relationships to this change? These are context questions. And you don't find that many leaders will pay attention to those two questions. And as a consequence, people push back because the relationship is now upset. People respond and resist change because it's a relational upset, not a logical upset. It's a relational upset. So that's what context addresses, is the relational dynamic. How you go about doing both of those things, awareness and context, has to do with communication mastery. Most people are accidental communicators. And I literally mean that. The way that human beings learn to communicate is through trial and error. Yeah, we make a sound and mom all of a sudden smiles from ear to ear and she goes, "My God, it talks." It talks. And we go, "Oh, man, mom's smiling and she picked me up and she hugged me." Reinforcement. So trial and error with reinforcement. That's how we learn to communicate, because it's about generating meaning. A definition of communication is very simple. A very simple definition of communication is this: it's the ways, plural, that we work out common meaning with one another. That's what communication is. It's the ways we work out common meaning. If we don't have common meaning about something, we are not communicating. We're just making noise. So, Gene, back to your point about the insurance adjuster here. If you don't have common meaning worked out, they hear noise and they're reacting to noise. They're not responding to meaning in a way that we would like it to happen. The purpose of any communication is to produce a result. Interestingly, the purpose of leadership is to produce a result. Leadership and communication, they're inseparable. You have to be able to master the meaning-making component that is embedded in communication. That's why communication mastery becomes such a critical piece of this. And then there's commitment. We talked about this on the front end, the big difference between commitment and
Yeah.
compliance. So we communicate in a way that generates commitment, and we do that through ownership transfer. Contextually, yeah, they now see a place for them to play. Communication, meaning is in place here. Now we have commitment, or at least we have the basis for creating commitment. And then the final piece on this has to do with trust. And what we find is that, again, everything in an organization is based on relationship. Everything in an organization is relationship. Trust is the foundation of all relationships. Period, the end. How do we create it? How do we sustain it? How do we rebuild it when it's been broken? And that's why it's one of the core components of the 4 pillars. So this ACT model, when we break down the activity of leadership, it basically comes down to 5 pieces: awareness, contextual, definition, communication, commitment as a consequence of those 4, and then trust as the foundation that we build on. So that's kind of the model. So just stop real quick here before we put you into some breakout groups. How does this land for you? I mean, questions, comments, just observations, kind of, how does this play out in your mind as we talk about it? Let me put that a different way. How does this play out in your mind as I actually position this as you hear about it?
I'll do that. There we go. Let's see if it'll work. There we go. Thumbs up.
Does this make sense? Does this make sense? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. In our mastermind, and we're not going to talk about the mastermind until Friday, but I just want you to know
Yeah.
that this model we do up for a full year. These 5 components are broken down like awareness. We will spend 3 months, literally 3 months, on the piece called awareness, because it is such a deep part of understanding what it means to be truly the kind of leader that we're talking about here. We'll spend 3 months on awareness. We'll spend 2 months on context generation. We'll spend 3 months on communication. I mean, and it's deep dive. It is a deep
Yeah.
dive exploration that is intended to not only work with mindset, but skill set. Yeah, as a part of that. So this is kind of how this is structured. This is the core of the work we do. It happens within the leadership universe, and it's built on these 4 pillars. So questions, comments, Doug? Yeah.
Is there a process around that? So where do you start? What do you start with one area, or do you do your activity and you notice something, and then how does the interplay work in this case? I love the way it works. I love the interaction between the 5 areas.
Yeah.
How do you practically work through that on a day-to-day basis?
Great question. When we present this kind of material, it's segmented. It's kind of like, okay, here's a piece. They are actually, it's a bespoke piece. I mean, if you think of a jigsaw puzzle, you pick up complete a jigsaw puzzle by one piece and the whole piece comes with it. So the question, where do we start? It's kind of like, what seems to be in play? Yeah, if I notice, yeah, I'm getting compliance more often than not from my team or from the folks that I'm working with. And the compliance shows up in a lot of ways. Um, some of it can be, tell me what to do and I'll go do it, instead of taking initiative. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that shows up. That gives me a starting point. Okay, what was I missing in the communication piece? Where's the meaning? Yeah, yeah. Is the meaning embedded in a way that it needs to be? So we can start any place with this. Some of you may be familiar with the Lencioni trust model. If there's a trust breakdown, and trust shows up in a couple of different ways, breakdowns. So we may start with that, and we may have to go all the way back to awareness, just noticing, okay, on the team, what are we noticing here that is getting in our way that we haven't noticed before? So we can use any of these 5 areas as starting points. What we want to be able to do is have you guys actually, over the course of a year when we're working with you, to really begin to master the sensibility for all five of these, so that you do have a pretty well assembled palette of resource that you can actually leverage. Yeah. Okay. What seems to be in play here? What can I do with that? Where do I go with that? And
Yeah.
that's kind of how that ends up working. So I guess my
Great
answer,
question.
Doug, has to do with it's situational and it kind of depends on where I start, but I want to be able to be familiar with all of it in order to use it.
Are there ways to measure and manage progress?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to give you a little questionnaire today that, gives you kind of a starting point on these.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, there are. That's such a great question, Doug, because it is. We have that tendency to kind of say, "I'm going to start here, then I'm going to do the kind of that. I'm going to do A, then I'm going to do B, then I'm going to do C, then I do E." And in a lot of cases, when you're working with an organization, because it is a living entity, you're going to start at C, and then you're going to go back to A, and then you're going to do E. But you're doing it all for an intended outcome, and it comes into measuring the gates and the measures that you're looking for as you move towards those outcomes. So. We are going to. Great question. What in any other thoughts? I don't want to cut anybody else off. Any other thoughts? Or it's a lot of content to throw at you guys, especially when we spend a year going through these 5 steps. The in 30 minutes. The what we're going to do is I'm going to share in the chat now today's document, and I'll share my screen just briefly with you. And we're going to set a timer. We're not going to go into groups just yet, but I'm going to set a timer. And what I would like to do is if everybody can grab that document, let me grab it on my screen. And this is our day 2 worksheet. And in this worksheet, beginning on page 2, there's a questionnaire. And the questionnaire covers each of these domains. And this questionnaire is intended for you specifically. And I'm sure you've all, everybody thumbs up, everybody's got it, able to get it and download it. I know, Mark, you're out and about, so great. Oh, there we go. I'll do this. There we go. I'm gonna there's
Yeah,
my
get
sprinkles.
the screen going again
Okay,
here.
get my sprinkles. The but we're gonna stop and we'll take 7 minutes. 7 seems to be the magic number from yesterday, and I'll set a timer for 7 minutes, but it's an opportunity to do a little self-assessment, a little self-check-in just in these areas. And this is top of mind, not in depth, not we're not going to take a lot of time to go through this, but all with the intention of there is no right or wrong. It's if you think of it as if what muscle am I going to work on? What do I need to focus on? Where do I feel I could be spending more time developing that skill? So I'll set the timer, we'll go, and when we come back, then we'll go into some breakout groups and share experiences with each other and we'll use the back half of this worksheet as the guideline for the breakout groups, and we'll come back and close for today. So I'm going to set a 7-minute timer and hit start. Thank you, Zoom, for all the wonderful apps. I'm really going to do this as we go. Appreciate everybody's patience as we figure this out. And a little mindful music.
Little mindful music, yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
And I got a Davita. Mindful music.
Just a few more seconds. Wait for it. I'm sorry. It's the geek in me that can't help but love that ending. How was that exercise for everybody as you kind of reflect on those? And those 7 minutes can be a lot of time or too little time. How did that feel from a time perspective? Yeah, good. Okay. See
I'm nodding.
Jill. I see
Jennifer,
Jill's
okay. Yeah, good.
Jill's furrowed brow. Yeah, got it.
Alma, thank you. Okay.
Awesome. So what we want to do is we want to give you an opportunity to, there's the power of the mastermind. Think and Grow Rich. Napoleon Hill talks about the power of the mastermind, and that's part of the intention for this group. We're going to put you into some breakout groups, and in the breakout groups, it's an opportunity to share your insights on the things that you discovered and get to know each other a little bit. We're not going to give you specifics on things to do in the breakout, but do introduce yourself, where you are, what you do a little bit. But we'll set a timer, and I'm thinking another 7 minutes, Blaine, or should we do 10?
Uh,
7's short, I think.
7 short for the conversation that I think we want to have.
All right, I'm gonna leave it.
So let's do 10.
I'm
And
gonna leave it as 10
we've
then.
got time for 10, so let's do 10.
All right, so I'm going to send everybody into the breakout groups, and then we'll come back and wrap up for today. And I'll give you another couple of more documents to take with you, and we'll set up for tomorrow. So we're going to go into breakout groups. Here we go. And we're in negative time. So let me turn the timer off.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure how we can be in negative time, but we are. There we go.
I'm getting younger.
A little Benjamin Button.
Yeah.
Pause our recording.
Olga, are you in the Bay Area, or is that just a backdrop that you like? Olga?
It's just backdrop.
Just a backdrop. Okay.
It's a good backdrop.
Yes.
All right,
Well, welcome back, everybody.
Welcome back. And we're at the top of the hour. We had promised to keep everybody relatively closer on time today. So just in short, how was the experience? You meet some interesting people, have some good conversation.
We did.
Good. That's important. That's a very important part of it. So as we're closing down today, a couple of things. The very first thing is the opportunity with the worksheets is, we're going to give all of the worksheets again to you on Friday, and I just made a note. I'll set up a shared drive so that you guys can all access them. Those, if you had any challenges getting to them, that way you can go every day to one place, and we'll remind you of the link so you don't have to worry about remembering it. That you can go get the PDFs. I did not set that up for you yet, so I'll do that today.
And I just put the link for the replays, the video replays. So there's now a link in the chat area here,
right,
for the video replays for each day.
Yeah. And so there's 2 documents I'm going to drop into the chat now. The very first PDF is a reference document. And we talked about the 4 pillars. We don't spend a lot in this leadership transformation challenge. We don't spend much time inside of the 4 pillars because we're focused on the ACCCT model, ACCCT model. We're focused on the ACT model. But in that document that I just gave you, it shows both of them side by side, and maybe will help align some of the thinking around from an awareness perspective, what does it mean for trust and communication, and how does it connect into the 4 pillars? The other thing that I'm going to drop in, and no worries, thank you. Dolan's hard to read, but I get hit with Donald, and that guy Donald is always trying to cash my checks. The other thing I'm going to drop in is yesterday we mentioned briefly when we were talking about the definition of leadership that Blaine and I would create a worksheet. So we worked together last night and created a worksheet. It's also just a reminder of the definition of leadership and the for the sake of what, and then how to implement it. Things that you can do when you're thinking about planning your leadership activities and steps that you can take, and just use it as a, don't use it as rote, but use it as a strict guideline. Use it as something that can help you have a framework when you're thinking about co-creating coordinated movement. What does that mean? Influencing. Who are the others? How do you think through those steps? So that's also in the chat, and I'll put that into the shared drive today, later on. And then you should all receive an email later in the day from Blaine and I. That's a recap of today, a reminder of the Zoom link for tomorrow, a link again to the private YouTube site where you can go and see the videos to the playlist. And I'll also drop into that a link to the Power of You private group that's on LinkedIn. So join that group as Blaine and I begin to populate content and other things into that as it grows. So that's housekeeping for today.
That's it.
That's it. So
Yeah.
there's always end these with a sense of gratitude. The very first thing is every one of you could be someplace else at this point in time, and you've decided to be here with us as a motion towards investing yourselves as leaders. So thank you for being here with us and for investing that time. And our intention remains that whatever's in our head, we are going to try to keep it to an hour. It's in our head. We're gonna provide that to you every day to the best of our ability. So.
And tomorrow, 9 a.m. Pacific time, we're going to be looking at how do we lead through change. Remember, leaders cause
Resilience.
and change causes confusion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to be taking a look at that. So
Yes.
yeah, pragmatic application.
It'll be fun. All right. Have a great rest of your day. See everybody tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
bye-bye.
Take care.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.